The red and blue lights painted the desert highway like a fever dream. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, not from fear of the ticket I was about to get, but from something I couldn't name yet, something that had been chasing me across 3 state lines, through countless sleepless nights, and into this moment where everything I thought I knew about myself was about to shatter like glass on asphalt. I should have known the night would end like this. Running never works. Not really. You can drive fast, change your name, cut your hair, reinvent yourself in every truck stop bathroom mirror between Arizona and Nevada, but the truth has a way of catching up. And tonight, the truth wore a badge and had eyes that could see straight through every lie I'd ever told myself. License and registration. Her voice cut through the darkness, professional and measured, but there was something else underneath it, something that made my breath catch. I fumbled through my glove compartment, my fingers clumsy and cold despite the desert heat still radiating from the pavement. When I finally handed her the documents, our fingers brushed. It lasted maybe half a second, but in that half second, something ignited that I'd spent 28 years trying to ignore. Maya Torres, she read from my license, and the way she said my name made it sound like a question, like she was asking who I really was, not just what some piece of plastic claimed. "You're a long way from home." I don't really have one of those anymore. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Too honest, too raw. I wasn't supposed to be real with cops. I wasn't supposed to be real with anyone. She tilted her head, studying me in the glow of her flashlight. Sheriff Rodriguez, her name tag read, first name obscured by shadow. "Your left taillight's been out, probably for weeks judging by the dust pattern, but that's not why you're shaking, is it?" God, she saw too much. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Her eyes held me there, dark and impossibly deep, like she was offering me something I didn't know how to accept. Safety, maybe, or understanding, or something far more dangerous than either. "I'm fine," I lied. "Sure you are." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Not yet. "Wait here." She walked back to her patrol car, and I watched her in my rearview mirror, my heart doing things hearts shouldn't do during traffic stops. This was ridiculous. I was ridiculous. I just left everything behind in Phoenix. My job at the law firm, my apartment, my boyfriend of 4 years who'd proposed with his grandmother's ring and perfect timing and absolutely no understanding of why I'd said I needed time to think. 3 weeks later, I was still thinking, still running, still pretending the problem was him when the problem had always been me. Sheriff Rodriguez returned, but she didn't hand me a ticket. She leaned down, resting her arms on my car door, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and clean that made my stomach flip. "Here's the thing, Maya Torres," she said quietly. "I've been doing this job for 6 years. I can spot a runner from a mile away. And you're running from something big. I'm just driving. At 2 in the morning on a highway that goes nowhere, with California plates and a backseat full of hastily packed boxes?" She raised an eyebrow. "Try again." I should have been defensive, should have told her it was none of her business, should have done anything except what I did, which was look into those knowing eyes and feel something inside me crack wide open. I don't know what I'm running from. I just know I can't go back. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she smiled. "You ever been to Silverton?" "Where?" "The town about 15 miles up this road. Population 812. Best diner in the county. Terrible cell service. Good place to stop running and start figuring things out." She straightened up, pulling a card from her pocket. "This is my direct number. You need anything, you call. I mean anything, Maya. Even if it's just someone to talk to at 3 in the morning when the silence gets too loud." I took the card, my fingers trembling. "Why are you helping me?" Her smile turned sad, like she understood something about me that I hadn't figured out yet. Because someone helped me once when I was running too, and because, she paused, something vulnerable flashing across her face before she locked it away again. Because I think you're going to need a friend where you're going, and maybe I need one too. She walked back to her car without another word, without giving me a ticket, without explaining any of it. I sat there, on the shoulder of that empty highway, her card burning in my hand like a promise or a prophecy, and made a decision that would change everything. I drove to Silverton. The town was exactly what she'd described: small, quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed immediately. I checked into the one motel, a rundown place called the Desert Rose with vacancy signs that probably never turned off, and tried to sleep. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, thinking about dark eyes and gentle hands, and the way my entire body had responded to a stranger's kindness. This wasn't new, not really. There had been signs my whole life, the way I'd felt about my best friend in high school, the confusion when other girls talked about boys and I couldn't quite match their enthusiasm, the relationships I'd forced myself into, always feeling like I was playing a part in someone else's story. But I'd gotten good at ignoring it, good at telling myself I just hadn't found the right man yet, good at building a life that looked perfect from the outside, even as it suffocated me from within. Sheriff Rodriguez had seen through all of it in 5 minutes. I didn't call her that first night, or the second. I spent my days exploring Silverton, drinking coffee at the diner she'd mentioned, watching the desert light change from gold to amber to deep purple. I spent my nights thinking about everything I'd left behind and everything I was too afraid to reach for. On the third night, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but somehow I knew. "You haven't called." Her voice was warm, slightly amused. "I was starting to think you'd moved on." "How did you know I stayed?" "Small town. The motel owner's my cousin. She mentioned a woman with California plates and sad eyes who pays in cash and doesn't talk much." A pause. "Are you okay, Maya?"
"I don't know," I admitted. "I don't know what okay feels like anymore." "Then let me buy you a drink. Not as a sheriff, just as someone who's been where you are." We met at a bar on the edge of town, the kind with neon signs and a jukebox that only played country music from before we were born. She was out of uniform, wearing jeans and a simple black shirt, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked different, softer, more real. "Carmen," she said, extending her hand, "since we're doing this as normal people instead of cop and suspicious driver." "Maya," but you already knew that. I shook her hand, and that same electric current from our first meeting shot through me. From the way her eyes widened slightly, she felt it too. We talked for hours. She told me about growing up in Silverton, about being the first woman in her family to go into law enforcement, about coming out at 19 and watching her parents struggle to understand before eventually accepting. She told me about her ex-girlfriend, a woman named Lisa, who'd wanted to move to Los Angeles and couldn't understand why Carmen was rooted to this small desert town. Some people are made for bright lights in big cities, but I need this. The space, the quiet, the way you can see every star at night. She looked at me. "What about you? What are you made for?" "I thought I knew," I said quietly. "I had this whole life planned out. The career, the husband, the house in the suburbs, everything my parents wanted, everything I was supposed to want. But you don't want it." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I want to want it. Does that make sense? I want to be the person who fits into that life, but every time I try, I feel like I'm drowning." Carmen reached across the table and took my hand. It should have been too much, too fast, too intimate for someone I barely knew. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing I'd experienced in years. "Maya," she said softly, "you don't have to drown. You don't have to force yourself into someone else's story. You can choose something different. What if I don't know how? Then you learn. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Her thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers at my arm. And you don't have to do it alone. I looked at our joined hands, at the way my fingers had automatically laced through hers, like they'd been waiting for this moment my entire life. Carmen, I don't know what I'm doing. I just left my boyfriend. I'm supposed to be figuring out my life, not what? She leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely more than a whisper. Not feeling something real for the first time? Not being honest about who you are? I'm scared. Good. Being scared means it matters. But Maya, I need you to understand something. I'm not here to push you or rush you or make you figure everything out tonight. I'm just here for as long as you need. We left the bar after midnight, and she walked me back to my motel. The desert air was cool now, filled with the sound of crickets and distant wind. We stopped outside my room, and the space between us felt charged with possibility and terror, and something that felt dangerously close to fate. Thank you, I said, for tonight, for everything. Maya, she said my name like a prayer. Can I be honest with you? I nodded, not trusting my voice. The night I pulled you over, I knew I should just have given you a warning and let you go. But something made me stop, made me want to make sure you were okay. And when you looked at me with those eyes full of running and fear and hope, she paused, shaking her head slightly. I knew I was in trouble, the good kind of trouble. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. Carmen, She kissed me, gentle and questioning and absolutely perfect. Her hand cupped my cheek, her thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen, and everything I'd been running from and running toward crystallized in that single moment. This was what I'd been missing. This was what had always been wrong with every relationship before. This sense of rightness, of coming home, of finally being seen and known and wanted for exactly who I was. When she pulled back, her eyes were searching mine. Was that okay? I laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and relief and disbelief. I've never felt anything more okay in my entire life. She smiled, that beautiful, devastating smile. Good, because I'd really like to do it again. And she did. We kissed under the flickering neon of the Desert Rose Motel sign, and I felt myself fall into something I'd been avoiding my whole life. Not just attraction or desire, though there was plenty of that, but acceptance, truth, the terrifying and exhilarating freedom of finally being myself. The next few weeks were a blur of discovery. Carmen showed me Silverton, the hiking trails that wound through Red Rock canyons, the hidden swimming pool where teenagers went to escape the heat, the roof of the sheriff's station where you could watch the sunrise paint the desert gold. We spent long nights talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories and scars and dreams. And slowly, carefully, I stopped running. I got a job at the local legal aid office, helping people who couldn't afford lawyers navigate the system. It wasn't the prestigious corporate law I had been doing in Phoenix, but it felt meaningful in a way my old job never had. I found a small apartment above the bookstore on Main Street. I learned the names of my neighbors and the rhythm of small-town life.
But it wasn't all easy. My ex kept calling, confused and hurt and demanding answers I didn't know how to give him. My mother cried when I finally told her I wasn't coming back, that I'd met someone, that the someone was a woman. I don't understand, she kept saying. You were happy. You were engaged. I was performing, I told her quietly. There is a difference. Carmen held me while I cried after those conversations. She didn't try to fix it or minimize it or tell me it would all work out. She just held me and let me feel everything I needed to feel.
"They'll come around," she said one night, running her fingers through my hair. "Or they won't. But either way, you're choosing yourself now. That's what matters." "What if I'm being selfish?" "Then be selfish, Maya. You've spent 28 years living for everyone else. You're allowed to live for yourself, too." 3 months after that night on the highway, Carmen took me to meet her parents. I was terrified, but they welcomed me with warmth and homemade tamales and stories about Carmen as a stubborn, idealistic child who'd always wanted to protect people. "She's been different since she met you," her mother said, pulling me aside while Carmen and her father argued about football. "Lighter, happier. Thank you for that." "She's the one who saved me," I said. "No, mija," she squeezed my hand. "You saved yourself. Carmen just held the flashlight so you could see the way." 6 months in, things got complicated. Carmen's department was investigating a series of break-ins, and the investigation led to someone I knew, a paralegal from my old firm who'd apparently turned to crime after losing his job. When Carmen came to question me, the professional distance we'd maintained in public collapsed. "I need you to tell me everything you know about Derek Mitchell," she said, her voice tight and official. We were in the sheriff's station, other deputies watching with curiosity. Everyone in town knew about us by now. Small places didn't allow for secrets, but we'd kept our relationship separate from her work. "Carmen, Sheriff Rodriguez," she corrected, her eyes apologizing as her voice stayed firm. "This is official, Maya." It hurt, that distance. Even knowing it was necessary, even understanding she had a job to do, it felt like being pushed away. We spent that evening on opposite sides of an interrogation table, me answering questions about someone I'd barely known, her taking notes with professional detachment. When it was over, we sat in her truck in the parking lot, neither of us moving. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know that was hard. You were doing your job. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Doesn't mean it didn't kill me to treat you like a witness instead of—" She broke off, shaking her head. "Instead of what?" She turned to me, her eyes fierce and vulnerable. "Instead of the person I'm falling in love with." My breath caught. We hadn't said those words yet. We'd danced around them, implied them, shown them in 1,000 small actions, but neither of us had made it real by speaking it out loud. "Carmen, she don't have to say it back," she said quickly. "I know this is all still new for you. I know you're still figuring things out. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest." I reached for her hand, lacing our fingers together. "I'm terrified," I admitted, "because I do love you. I love you in a way I never knew was possible, and that scares me more than anything I've ever felt. Because it's real? Because it's real. Because I can't pretend with you. I can't hide or perform or be anyone other than exactly who I am. And that's terrifying and liberating, and I don't know what to do with all of it." She pulled me close, kissing my forehead. "You don't have to do anything except keep being honest, keep choosing yourself, keep letting me be part of this messy, beautiful, complicated journey. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." The break-in case was solved, Derek was arrested, and I had to give testimony that helped convict someone I'd once worked alongside. My old firm called, offering me my job back, with a raise and a promotion. For a moment, I considered it. The money, the prestige, the easy path back to the life I'd known. But when I looked around my tiny apartment above the bookstore, when I thought about my work at Legal Aid and the clients who thanked me with homemade pie and genuine gratitude, when I imagined leaving Carmen and the life we were building together, "I'm staying," I told her. "I'm staying in Silverton. I'm staying with you. I'm choosing this." She cried, which I'd never seen her do. This woman who faced down criminals and dangerous situations without flinching, who'd seen me through my darkest moments with steady strength. She cried with relief and joy. "Are you sure?" she asked. "You're absolutely sure?" "I've never been sure of anything in my life, except this, except you, except who I am when I'm with you." A year after that night on the highway, we stood together at the town's annual festival.
Carmen was in uniform, on duty, but taking a break to walk through the booths with me. People greeted us warmly, the same people who'd watched me arrive broken and running, who'd seen me heal and grow and fall in love. "You happy?" Carmen asked, stealing a bite of my funnel cake. I looked around at the small town celebration, at the desert sky turning pink with sunset, at this woman who'd seen me at my worst and chose to stay anyway. "I didn't know I could be this happy," I said honestly. "A year ago, I was running from everything. Now I'm running toward something, toward myself, toward us." She pulled me close, mindless of who might be watching. "For what it's worth, I'm glad your taillight was out that night." I laughed. "Carmen Rodriguez, did you pull me over because you were attracted to me?" "I pulled you over because your taillight was out," she said primly. Then she grinned. "The fact that you had eyes that made me forget proper procedure was just a happy accident." "You're terrible." "You love it." "I do. I love you. Even though I handcuffed you that first night, you gave me a warning, not handcuffs." She pulled me closer, her voice dropping low. "Yeah, but metaphorically, I definitely handcuffed you. To my heart, to this life, to everything we're building together." "Well then," I whispered against her lips, "I guess I'm guilty of running away from everything I was supposed to be, of finding exactly what I never knew I needed, of falling in love with the sheriff who saw through every wall I'd ever built. And your sentence? Life, with you, in this small town in the middle of the desert, living honestly for the first time in my life." She kissed me then, deep and sweet and full of promise. Around us, the festival continued, life moving forward the way it always does. But in that moment, everything stood still. I'd spent 28 years running from myself. It took a broken taillight, a desert highway, and a sheriff with knowing eyes to make me finally stop, to make me realize that sometimes the person you're running from is the only person you need to find. My mother eventually came to visit, 6 months later. She was stiff and uncomfortable at first, but Carmen won her over with patience and genuine kindness. By the end of the weekend, I found them laughing together in the kitchen, sharing recipes and stories. "She's good for you," my mother admitted as we sat on the apartment steps, watching the sunset. "I can see it. You're different now. More yourself." "I'm sorry I couldn't be who you wanted." She took my hand. "I wanted you to be happy. I just thought I knew what that looked like. I was wrong." She squeezed my fingers. "I'm learning, mija. It's not easy, letting go of the picture I had in my head, but you're my daughter, and I love you. That's bigger than any picture." I cried then, leaning against her shoulder the way I had as a child. Some part of me had been waiting for this, her acceptance, her love, her willingness to see me as I really was. "Thank you," I whispered. "No," she said firmly. "Thank you for being brave enough to live your truth, for showing me that love comes in forms I didn't expect, for being yourself even when it was hard." That night, curled up in Carmen's arms, I finally felt it, that sense of coming home, not to a place, but to myself, to the truth I'd been running from, to the love I'd been too afraid to reach for. "What are you thinking?" Carmen asked, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. "That I'm grateful for broken taillights." She laughed, the sound rumbling through her chest. "Yeah? Yeah, because if mine hadn't been out, I'd still be running, still pretending, still living someone else's life." I tilted my head to look at her. "You saved me that night, Carmen. Not from the law, from myself." "You saved yourself, Maya. You made the choice to stop running, to stay, to be honest. I just got to be there while you did it. Best traffic stop of my life. Only traffic stop that ended with you moving to town and us falling in love. That we know of," I teased. "Maybe this is your move. Pull over sad women with broken taillights and make them fall for you." She rolled on top of me, pinning my hands above my head with a grin. "Just you, Torres. Only ever you." "Promise?" Promise. She kissed me deeply. You're stuck with me now. You and this small town and this life we're building. Sounds perfect. And it was. Not in the flawless, Instagram-worthy way my old life had been, but in a real, messy, honest way that actually felt like living. Some days were hard. Coming out wasn't a single moment, but an ongoing process, especially with extended family and old friends. But Carmen was there for every conversation, every struggle, every small victory. We built a life together in Silverton. A life full of quiet mornings and shared coffee, of department barbecues where her colleagues became my friends, and legal aid cases that made a real difference in people's lives. A life where I could wake up and recognize myself in the mirror, where I could love without pretending, where I could finally breathe. 2 years after that first night, Carmen took me back to that stretch of highway where we'd met. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of amber and rose. "Why are we here?" I asked as she parked on the shoulder. She pulled a small box from her pocket and my heart stopped. Because this is where my life shifted, where I pulled over a woman with a broken taillight and sad eyes and somehow knew my world was about to change. She opened the box, revealing a simple silver band. "Maya Torres, you were running when I found you, but you stopped running and started building. You chose yourself. You chose us. You chose this life. Now I'm asking you to choose forever. Marry me. Not because it's what you're supposed to do or what anyone expects, but because you want to. Because this is real. Because we're real." I was crying, laughing, pulling her close. Yes, God, yes, 1,000 times yes. She slipped the ring on my finger and we kissed on that same stretch of highway where everything had begun, where a routine traffic stop had turned into a life-changing encounter, where running had turned into staying, where fear had turned into love. "I love you, Sheriff Rodriguez," I whispered against her lips. "I love you too, soon to be Mrs. Rodriguez," she whispered back. We stood there as the sun set and the stars emerged one by one, painting the desert sky with light. And I thought about all the versions of myself I'd tried to be, all the lives I'd attempted to live, all the years I'd spent running from a truth I couldn't name. It took a broken taillight to stop me. It took a small-town sheriff with gentle hands and knowing eyes to help me see. It took courage I didn't know I had to finally be honest. But standing there on that desert highway with a ring on my finger and love in my heart, I knew with absolute certainty that every mile I'd run, every tear I'd cried, every moment of fear and doubt had been worth it, because they'd led me here, to myself, to Carmen, to a life that was finally, beautifully, authentically mine. The girl who'd been running was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew exactly where she belonged. And it wasn't in the life she'd left behind or the one she'd been expected to live. It was here, in a small desert town with a population of 812, with a woman who wore a badge and carried handcuffs and had somehow managed to capture my heart. We drove back to town together, hands linked across the console, the ring on my finger catching the last rays of sunlight. Tomorrow, we'd start planning a wedding. Next week, I'd call my family with the news. Next month, we'd figure out the details of building a life together officially, legally, permanently. But tonight, we were just two women who'd found each other on a lonely stretch of highway, who chose to stop running and start living, who decided that love, real love, honest love, was worth every risk and every fear. 2 sheriffs had handcuffed me that night, one literal, one metaphorical. The first gave me a warning, the second gave me a future, and I'd never been more grateful to be caught.